name is Alexis. In 2005, Jane Friedman wrote in her article Teen Sex that more teenagers in the United States have encountered more pregnancies, births, and abortion than any other industrialized nation. 4 million teens contract a sexually transmitted disease each year. So my question to you is, why is this happening? Is it because of the sex education that they're getting in schools? I believe that abstinence-only programs funded by government are ineffective in comparison to full comprehensive sex education programs. I have 3 secondary claims. First, abstinence-only programs promote abstinence usually until marriage as the only way to reduce the risk of pregnancy, disease, and other potential consequences of sex. Secondly, abstinence-only programs are ineffective. And thirdly, full comprehensive sex education programs are more effective than its counterpart. First, I'd like to define what exactly abstinence-only programs include and what full comprehensive education programs include. Abstinence-only programs they promote abstinence from sex. They do not acknowledge that many teenagers will become sexually active. They do not teach about contraception or condom use. They avoid discussions of abortion, and they cite sexually transmitted diseases and HIV as reasons to remain abstinent. In comparison, full comprehensive sex education programs promote abstinence from sex. However, they acknowledge that many teenagers will become sexually active. They teach about contraception and condom use, and they include discussions about contraception, abortion, sexually transmitted diseases, and HIV. So now that you know both of those definitions, I'd like to start with my first secondary claim that abstinence-only programs promote abstinence, usually until marriage, is the only way to reduce the risk of pregnancy, diseases, and other potential consequences of sex. First, programs are not allowed to speak about the contraceptives and disease prevention methods except to emphasize their failure rates. This is written by this was actually said in a congressional testimony by medical doctor Benjamin George, entitled Abstinence-Only Programs in America Are Ineffective. Secondly, these programs seem to include discussion on values and focus on character building. In a article by Waxman, abstinence-only approach to sex education is not supported by the extensive body of scientific research on what works to protect young people from HIV, AIDS, sexually transmitted infections, and unplanned pregnancy. Also, he goes on to say that these programs are also attempts to stigmatize premarital sex as immoral and shameful. Moving on to my second secondary claim that abstinence-only programs are ineffective. There have been multitudes of research studies that have been done. Specifically in 2007, the Bush administration released results of a controlled study of 4 federally funded programs. During these studies, investigators found that compared to the control group, the abstinence-only programs had no impact on whether or not the participants abstained from sex. They had no impact on the age at which the teens started having sex, and they had no impact on the number of partners the teens had. Lastly, they had no impact on the rates of pregnancy or sexually transmitted diseases. Also, in 2009, the Cochrane collaboration studied 13 abstinence-only programs. As a result of their study, they could not find any enduring effect on teen sexual behavior. Third and final study that I'm going to be talking about by Jeanette E. Rosenbaum of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health reveals some shocking data. A national longitudinal study consisting of more than 934 high school students examined one of the factors used as a measurement of success for abstinence-only programs, the virginity pledge. This is when students in high school take an oath to remain celibate until they are married. In the study, she found that teens who had taken the virginity pledge compared to those who had not were significantly different in the fact that they had protected themselves less often than kids that hadn't taken the pledge. And they were less frequent users of birth control and other contraceptives, which in part is the complete opposite effect of what they were trying to achieve. Lastly, my third secondary claim, comprehensive sex education is more effective than its counterpart. Comprehensive sex education is based on the premise that every person has the right to information about sex and contraceptive choices. Experts in the field claim that sex education should encompass sexual development, reproductive health, interpersonal relationships, affection, intimacy, body image, and gender roles. These programs have been shown in many studies to delay sex, reduce the frequency of sex, and increase the use of condoms and other contraceptives. Lastly, we can see the success of these programs based on the results of use of them in other countries. In a paper done on the database Facts on File, World News Digest by John Friedman, he stated that every summer since 1998, Advocates for Youth have sponsored annual study tours to France, Germany, and the Netherlands to explore why adolescent sexual health outcomes are so much more positive in the 3 European countries than in the U.S. The study concludes that Europe's openness and comfort in dealing with sexuality and its pragmatic governmental policies create easier access to sexual health information and services for all people, including teens. In conclusion, I hope that you will agree with me that my main claim, abstinence-only programs funded by the government are ineffective in comparison to full comprehensive sex education programs, have been backed by my 3 secondary claims. Abstinence-only programs promote abstinence as the only way to avoid consequences of sex. Abstinence-only programs are ineffective, and full sex education programs are better than their counterparts.
Let me just remind somebody whoever is out there doing peer evaluations or reputations. This is Alexis. How do you say your last name? Benuelos? All right, because there's another. We have Alexi also, and that gets a little confusing sometimes. So just want to make sure that whoever is listening knows which speech they're responding to. All right. I thought you had a good quote to start off with. There's a very clear statement of the proposition, although the proposition is still kind of long and convoluted, but it's clear what your argument's going to be about. An excellent layout of what the supporting points are going to be. Background on the abstinence-only programs is okay. I do think you could use a little bit more source citation on that particular point. The one quote from the doctor describing the comparison between the 2 kinds of programs I thought was pretty good, but later on, for instance, I get the discussion of these virginity pledges, and I'm not sure if those are a part of the abstinence-only programs or if that's some extra thing that's going on that some schools partake in. So if the virginity pledge is part of the abstinence-only programs that the schools are funding, that should be in that earlier definition also. I thought you were very consistent about citing your sources. At first, I think on the first couple of points you eliminated the problem that you and I had talked about, that you were just summarizing what the content of the evidence was, and you were basically making an inference. On the third point, I did think you fell a little bit more back into the point where you're just describing here's what the research does or concluded, instead of telling us here's what the inference is and here's how the research supports it. So I didn't think it was quite as good on that third point, but the first 2 points were really solid. You do have a tendency to rush a little bit. Of course, you've got a lot of information, so you're trying to get through it, and as a consequence you tend to read and not engage the audience very much. Okay, thank you.